How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me, as always, is Leonard. And we are going to start what will probably be a new series of shows. And we're going to call this one the Down and Dirty Move Breakdown. What do you think about that, Leonard?
I was surprised by that title. I was not given that before coming on air. And I like it because it shows a little more creativity than the Spotlight. Although I think we're married to that now.
Yeah, I don't think we can go away from that now. I mean,
Yeah.
the millions and millions, they don't want us to change it. So, And this week, the first move we're going to break down is a neck breaker. And a neck breaker is pretty obviously a throw or a slam that focuses on an opponent's neck. But what Leonard and I didn't know before we started this is how many variations of neck breaker there really are. There are 20 plus variations, depending on how you define a variation, I guess. Over 20 different ways to execute a neck breaker. And it could be even more than that as we get into it, and we'll explain that as we go. So what we're going to do is we are going to basically just read you what the names of these variations are called, maybe add a couple of people that are known for executing that move, and we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a tournament. We're going to go in groups of 5 or 6, and we're going to pick our favorites out of those groups, and we'll start the tournament that way. So I am going to start with Leonard. Leonard, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for it. I don't know how it's going to go, but again, we're still new. We're still experimenting, and we're going to see how this works. We probably should have started with a more simple move, like a full Nelson. But again, as you said, did not realize how many different versions of the neck breaker that there are. When I say neck breaker, I think of a certain kind, and we'll get to that. I won't spoil that now. But then when I was reading all the different variations like you, I went, really? That counts? And again, We're going to talk about that as well. But go ahead with your first run, and I'll give you my thoughts on it.
And I had thought about bringing my kids in and showing everybody what the various moves are, but I thought that might not go well with our audience. They might not understand. So we're just going to read the names of the variations. So we'll start with Group A, and that is the first one on that list is the Argentine neck breaker, which you might have seen Kevin Owens or Prince Albert, whatever you want to say his name was at the time. They have both executed that move. Second is the arm trap neck breaker. People like CM Punk and William Regal have used this version of the neck breaker. Number 3 is the corkscrew neck breaker. And this is an unusual one, but the only person I saw that really does it regularly, and maybe there are more, is John Morrison. Number 4 on this list is the elevated neck breaker. You might have seen Jason Jordan or Randy Orton do a neck breaker. You're going to hear Randy Orton's name a lot on this list, by the way. The elevated elevated cradle neck breaker, is number 5. And that was executed by Consequences Creed. And I had to do a double take because I had no idea who Consequences Creed was by name. But upon further review, it is Xavier Woods.
Yes, that was his name in TNA. And he used to tag team with Ron the Truth Killings, R-Truth, and they were Truth and Consequences.
Right. And so, yes, he has been known to do that move. I don't think he does as much anymore, but hey. And the last one, we're doing 6 for this list, is the gut wrench elevated neck breaker, which also Randy Orton has done. So, Leonard, out of that group, and we will show you all the names in front of you. Out of that group, which is your favorite neck breaker?
Which is my favorite? Okay, can I talk a little bit about the different neck breakers?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. So the first one on the list was the Argentine neck breaker, and that is usually done by bigger guys, and I call that sort of, it's kind of like a torture rack where they swing the body out and then hit the neck breaker. That to me looks awkward when guys do it. And so that one is not, I'm not a big fan of the Argentine neck breaker. So that's not moving on for me.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. The arm trap neck breaker, known as the Regal cutter, and I know Punk does it too. I always think of it as the Regal cutter. That's where you've got the arm across the guy's neck like this. There's also a variation, the cross arm, where you got the arms like this. I do like that. It's easier. I think this looks smoother than having to grab both arms. I think, especially the way Regal does it, I think looks really good there. The corkscrew, of course, that's Moonlight Drive that Morrison does, and he, I think, is very underrated athletically.
Oh,
Even still today,
absolutely.
considering his age, he's over 40, I'm pretty sure, and what he can still do in the ring is amazing. And I love that version that he does. The elevated neck breaker, again, Randy Orton's all over this list, and I like a guy who he does a move, but he does variations on the move. You know, that's
Right.
part of his move set is not only the move,
Right.
but any different variation depending on the situation, the size of the guy, and different things. So I love that Orton has a bunch of different neck breakers, and I love his gut wrench version of the neck breaker, as opposed to his regular elevated version of the neck breaker. And Jason Jordan's looks real pretty too. I like his version of it. Then what was the and then the gut wrench, that those are all the neck breakers you mentioned, correct?
Yeah. Elevated neck breaker, elevated cradle, gut
Yeah.
wrench. Yep.
Yes, and the cradle is the one that Consequences Creed does. So variations on the theme with those last three. But out of this pool, Orton's gut wrench is my number 2, but my number 1, who I'm going to move on, is John Morrison's Moonlight Drive. That is just an iconic move that is very specific to him. I think some other guys do it, but it doesn't look as great, when they do it. So my vote to move on out of this is going to be the corkscrew neck breaker.
Oh, wow, I'm surprised. See, I thought you were going to go with the arm trap one, but that's a good one.
I do like Regal's arm trap. That would be my 3 on this, would be the arm trap neck breaker by Regal. But it's just, it's so pretty. The Moonlight Drive is so pretty and so well done the way he does it, that I've got to go with that. But this was the 3 that I really liked that I mentioned, real close for me on that.
All right. Well, we're going to go to Group B here.
Okay.
And we start out with the Fireman's Carry neck breaker, which you might have seen executed by many people, actually. Adam Cole, Kenta, AJ Styles. You also might hear it called Mauro Ranallo. You hear him call it Yushigoroshi, or, he sometimes pronounces it Yushingoroshi. However you pronounce it, that is also the name of this move, the Fireman's Carry neck breaker. Number 2 is inverted face lock neck breaker, which would be made famous by Kenzo Suzuki or Sting, obviously, and The Miz. Another name you're going to see a lot on here is The Miz. Number 3 is the flipping neck breaker, also known as the neck snap, which you might have seen people like Mr. Perfect, JTG, Bret Hart, all of those are doing it. I should add, this neck snap is when you're standing behind the opponent. Number 4 is the somersault neck breaker, which was made famous by Marcus Alexander Bagwell, called the Blockbuster. And that would be when you're standing or running in front of the opponent and kind of doing the same thing. And last on this list, number 5, the diving net breaker, which is made famous by people like Bobby Roode, Gail Kim, and I even found that John Moxley did it at one point. I don't know if he still does it, but those are the 5 for this group. Leonard, what are your thoughts on those?
All right. So this one is a little rougher for me, and maybe there's some comments, because a lot of these, I don't know if I would technically consider a neck breaker. The Fireman's Carry neck breaker doesn't feel like a neck breaker to me. It feels more like a back breaker variation, because the focus is dropping the guy on his back on your knee.
Right. It depends on who does it, to be honest. Some of them do it, and you can clearly see they're aiming for the back of the person's neck, which you have to really be skilled in your craft to do that and not really hurt the neck, the other person, I'm assuming. Other times, you're right. It does look like they'll go down on the person's, the small of their back or upper back.
Again, as you mentioned, Styles has one of the better looking ones of that. But to me, it looks more like a backbreaker. The inverted face lock neck breaker, which I always call the Scorpion Death Drop, Sting does.
Right.
That to me is an inverted DDT. Because inverted to me means, okay, so, and we're going to get to, what an inverted neck breaker is. But to me, that's an inverted DDT. Instead of facing down, you're facing up. So I don't know if I would necessarily call that. Again, we're getting
technically, because it's an inverted DDT, they are going on the back of the person's neck.
Yes, yeah. So again, that's a splitting of hairs here. is it an inverted DDT or is it an inverted neckbreaker because of where they're taking the bump? And the
Tomato,
neck is where
tomato,
the
right,
brain.
Leonard?
You're right. Yeah. So
And you know
that's
what?
one that I was a little
Just thoughts
on.
on the Scorpion Death Drop. Like, to me, it is,
Yes.
when it's executed, it's one of the coolest moves. It really is. However, when it takes whoever it is, regardless if it's Sting or, you know, Kenzo Suzuki, you know, if it takes them a while to put it on, then to me, I'm taken out of the moment. And sometimes with Sting specifically, if you look back, it would take him like way too long to like get the person into position so that he could protect them when they go down. And, you know, but it can be, if it's done really smoothly and fluidly, I think that's a really cool move. But go ahead. I know you're
Yeah.
deliberating in your head. We don't want to get you off track.
Yes, no, and I would say that of that ilk, Miz probably has my favorite version of that because it's sort of a combo because he
Yeah.
does the drop down to the back of the knee and then twists it into what I would actually call a neck breaker.
Right.
So the
Yep.
way that Miz does it, I really like. I think of this move, even though, you know, he's in the same breath as these other guys, Miz's version is probably my favorite version of this. We didn't have the flipping or somersault neckbreaker, the blockbuster. Again, kind of like with Morrison's Moonlight Drive, that is a iconic name for that, and this iconic look for that, an iconic guy who does that. Seth Rollins does the blockbuster too. It's a very special move every now and again in big matches.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think this does take a little setup to do because you have to wait for the guy to get in position.
Right.
You have to wait for them to, most of the time you've got a guy down, so you have time to get up on the top rope, and you have to wait for them to stand and get in position so you can do it. Although it doesn't look too fakey because, of course, a guy who's getting up may be out of it and he's going to stumble into the right spot for you to hit
Mr.
that.
Perfect was always one of the guys I thought that did this the best way.
Mhm.
You know, whether it's behind or in front, like he did it in such a fluid, like really crisp way each time
Yes.
in his match. Like when he was in his prime, man, there was no stopping him in that ring. But anyway.
Yeah, that the rolling neck snap, and again, the neck snaps from behind, the rolling neck breakers from the front.
Yeah, we want to make sure we make it clear because I know
Right.
people when they watch this episode, they're taking notes, right?
Right, and they're gonna say, well, that's not a neck breaker. You didn't explain. You didn't get that right move, right name. But I think Perfect did both from time to time. Again,
Yeah.
doing variations on the same move. So that's what I really liked about his. And then the diving neck breaker, that's similar to the blockbuster, but instead of doing the flip, you're just kind of coming off straight. And when I was researching today, I actually found out that the Bar, which is Sheamus and Cesaro, did a combination, which was Sheamus got the guy up in his white noise, and then Cesaro would come off either the corner, and I found one where he comes off the middle ropes and does a diving neck breaker. As cool as those guys are and as cool as that sounds, go and look at it. It's not very well done because the way the head is positioned, Cesaro can't get to it. So it's basically Cesaro kind of flying into Sheamus and the other guy, and Sheamus just dropping back with it.
Right.
Rather than him actually making contact with the guy's head, and Cesaro being the one to force down in the neck breaker. Good idea. I don't think the execution is great, at least in the ones that I watched today. So are those all the ones for this round again? Okay. So I'm going to go, again, I'm going with iconic. I'm going with well-known. I'm going with move to guy. I'm going with the blockbuster via Buff Bagwell.
Oh, man. Buff Bagwell moves on. Who would have predicted?
Yep, I'm going to Blockbuster. Or if it makes you, I'm going to Blockbuster, yes. But if it makes you feel better out there in internet land, think of the Seth Rollins version.
Right.
All
right. So we are moving on. It is my turn to do the voting here. So Leonard is going to read off some of the names here.
So our first is the inverted neck breaker, aka a cutter or a stunner. So
okay. So are we doing this now? You said stunner.
Okay, so how are you considering it?
Well,
because to me, a cutter is you got the guy up in position and you jump out with it, much like the diamond cutter that DDP is known for. A stunner is the exact same position, but you're dropping straight down with it.
And when I did my research, they didn't like it wasn't on any of these pages, and I was like, I wonder why that is. It's because it's called a jawbreaker. That's what a stunner is considered. It's considered a jawbreaker.
Okay, so why isn't a cutter like a jumping jawbreaker or a sit-out jawbreaker?
I don't know. Maybe next week we'll have DDP and Stone Cold on, and they'll tell us why.
Yeah. I'll just give them a call. But anyway, if we want to keep this to a cutter, guys most known for doing a cutter would be DDP, of course, the RKO by Randy Orton, and the guy who really got us going, oddly enough, was Johnny. Was Johnny Ace's? Was that the Ace cutter? Was a cutter.
His is considered a stunner.
His is a stunner. All right, there you go. One or the other. And also note, there's various different variations, of course, of the cutter. Right. Of the basic cutter, of course, DDP, RKO is your two most known ones. The neckbreaker slam, to me, when I think of a neckbreaker, this is what I think of a neckbreaker slam. This is where you got the guy up and again, we're going to talk about two more, but after I talk to everyone, I'll tell you the difference. But guys like Rick Rude with the Rude Awakening, Dolph Ziggler, Miz, Layla with the Layout, those are all neckbreaker slams. Well, actually, no, Layla, I think that's the next version. The Hangman's neckbreaker / shoulder neckbreaker, that's done by Road Warrior Hawk, Adam Cole, and Layla. To me, so the Hangman's neckbreaker is where you got the guy and you drop straight down with it.
Right.
The neckbreaker slam is where you jump out with it. And also Mickey James's jumping neckbreaker could be considered a neckbreaker slam. Right. So to me, the difference between a Hangman's neckbreaker and a neckbreaker slam is the same difference as a cutter to a stunner.
Right.
And then we have the overdrive, which is done by Carlito or Alex Skipper. That's where you have Elix Skipper, right? I said Alex. Elix Skipper, which is where they have the leg over the guy's head and flips it around.
Right.
And then the inverted overdrive done by Matt Stryker, where he has the knee under the head instead of the knee over the head. So that's this round of neck breakers. The inverted neck breaker slam, Hangman's neck breaker, overdrive, inverted overdrive. Your thoughts and your pick.
All right. Yeah. So this is a hard group C here. So I got to say, I'll start from the bottom. I had never seen the inverted overdrive before. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, that is a wicked looking finisher. And
yeah, I don't remember him doing that. And I looked it up today, like you said, and I did like it. And I like the way he does it.
I mean, somebody else could certainly do that. Now, the regular overdrive done by Carlito and Elix Skipper, I associated it more oddly with Elix Skipper than I did Carlito for whatever reason. But that's always a cool move. The Hangman's neckbreaker. See, here's so there's neckbreaker slam and the Hangman's neckbreaker, which are very similar. You go out with the one and you just kind of drop straight down with the Hangman's neckbreaker. Now, it's tough. We didn't look at every Rick Rude match for this, obviously, but I think he did versions of both of those, really.
Yeah, I think he did. And of course, his version always had the hip gyrations for the ladies.
Right. And the inverted neck breaker, obviously the diamond cutter, the RKO, they had, like Leonard said, there are 12 different variations of ways you can do this, which you've seen people like DDP and Randy Orton do from time to time in their matches. So we're not going to go over all those variations. But, my favorite of these, this is going to be a bit of a controversial pick because the easy choice here is the RKO because it's become so popular. And, you've seen people do videos on YouTube where Randy Orton comes out of nowhere on the soccer field or on the football field and, he puts the RKO on. It's a great move. It really is. It's probably the best finisher in wrestling today because you can do it from just about any angle. You can put it on any opponent, and it's known to be a move where if he puts it on, you're done. And so it's a great move, but I'm not going to vote for that one this one because I'm going to vote for, I'll make it the Hangman's neckbreaker because I always associate that with Rude, regardless of whether you say does neckbreaker slam or the Hangman's neckbreaker. the rude awakening is what I grew up with. And
Mhm.
that to me defines what a neck breaker is. Now, it felt like in so few of his big matches did he get the opportunity to actually execute it, because he would really draw it out. If you remember, like it would take him a while to go around and then
Yeah.
drop down. But like he did it in such a crisp, really smooth fashion, and it really looked devastating. The commentators played it up as devastating. So I'm going to go with Rick Rude's Rude Awakening, the Hangman's Neckbreaker for this one.
I was probably going to have to go to your location and beat the crap out of you if you didn't choose that one.
Because I didn't choose the RKO?
No, that you didn't choose the Hangman's or the Neckbreaker Slam. I mean, those are the ones that
No, I did choose
think
the
of.
Hangman's Neckbreaker.
Yes, I'm saying if you hadn't chosen that one,
Oh, okay.
I would come get you. But you did, so we're fine.
Oh, okay.
All right. So next set, we've got some odd ones in here, but we have the Reverse Twist of Fate, which is done by Jeff Hardy, Steve Carino, Lita, and Christy Hemme. I'll do this one. So it's basically the twist of fate that Matt does, but instead of being top of the shoulder, you're underneath. I think, right? No, instead of being underneath, you're on top. See, again, this gets confusing as we try to explain what they are. The running neck breaker done by Jeff Jarrett or Shawn Michaels, again, similar to the neck breaker slam, they're just doing it while moving.
From a different angle.
Triple H also does a version of this, which I always called the walk-through neck breaker.
Okay.
And I also found it online called the evasion neck breaker, because
we're really confusing viewers now because we're throwing in our own names and
yes, that we call things. Because if Triple H like dodges the move, or if he comes off the ropes or he bounces out of the corner off of a whip, you'll see he'll walk past the guy and grab the head as he's walking past.
Right.
So instead of running, he's walking. I won't make comment on what that says about his work rate. The swinging neck breaker, which is done by CM Punk, Candice LeRae, who has a diving swinging neck breaker, and of course the Honky Tonk Man, whose Shake, Rattle, and Roll was a swinging neck breaker with some various theatrics thrown in. Right. The gory neck breaker / gory special, which is done by Peyton Royce. It may be known to a lot of people as Victoria's Widow's Peak. We have the Whiplash neckbreaker done by Nikki Cross, Mercedes Martinez, and Elias. He calls it the Drift Away. And I should mention that at least Nikki Cross, from what I was watching, her version is usually assisted. She's got the person hooked up on the ropes, on the apron, or on the turnbuckle, where Elias is just kind of grabbing the person's leg and doing it. So that's the set for this round: Reverse Twist of Fate, Running Neck Breaker, Swinging Neck Breaker, Gory Neck Breaker, the Whiplash Neck Breaker. All right, Chad, your pick out of those.
All right, so yeah, the Reverse Twist of Fate. Like I don't know how many times Jeff Hardy did that. Like he obviously is known for the senton, or the regular Twist of Fate we've seen him do, obviously. But it is a version, so there it is. The running neck breaker is pretty basic to me. It's almost like a like a transition move or a desperation move for a lot of talent when they do it. The swinging neck breaker, that one's okay. These are pretty basic, a lot of these. The gory neck breaker, the gory special, I like a lot, and the whiplash neck breaker, which is pretty cool too. That you see a lot of current talent doing that. My vote here is pretty easy. Despite how it might be awkward to put together, the Widow's Peak to me was always one of the most devastating looking finishers when she would get that on. So I have to go with the gory special here, because to me it is such a great move. And when somebody puts that on, to me that has to be a finisher. I don't know if I'll ever believe a time where that is like a transition move.
I think the elaborate setup means that it wouldn't be a transition move.
Right, exactly.
So we've got our final four, as it were, for our tournament.
So we're going to move on. We're gonna do a switch here. So now I get to pick the winner of the two that Leonard picked to move on. I have to pick one of those two, and Leonard, do you remember what your picks were? I do.
Yes, the corkscrew neck breaker, aka the Moonlight Drive, done by John Morrison, and the somersault neck breaker, aka the blockbuster, most famously done by Buff Bagwell and Seth Rollins.
Right, and those are two great moves. And you know what? This is hard because one is more old school, and the other one is very innovative and more modern. So it's kind of hard to pick in that way. But I'm gonna have to go old school here and pick the somersault neck breaker, the blockbuster, to move on to the final round.
You know, we joked about calling DDP and Stone Cold. I wonder if we could get Buff Bagwell.
Yeah, we'd
I
probably be able to
interviewed
get him.
I interviewed Buff Bagwell once. I may actually have contact for Buff Bagwell somewhere. And now I get to choose from Chad's.
Right, which we have the Hangman's neck breaker
Mm-hmm.
and the gory neck breaker / gory special.
Yeah. The gory neck breaker, again, looks super cool. The only thing with that is that it requires a little bit of cooperation from the opponent to get the legs in the right position.
Right.
Now, one way that I really like how the Widow's Peak is done is Victoria will have them like in a backdrop type of position, or she'll kick them so they're down, and then she flips them up and around. So then the legs are already kind of there, as opposed to when I've seen some other people do it and they're grabbing them from behind and trying to set it up. So
Right.
the flip way is, I think, an easier way to do it and makes it look better when you do it.
Right.
Of course, I mentioned that I would beat you up if you hadn't chose the Hangman's neck breaker, which when I think of a neck breaker, that's the version I think of, or the neck breaker slam. Against, they're very similar. The Rude Awakening, one of the most iconic finishing moves of all time. I love how Hawk does his neck breaker. I think if you would look up neck breaker if there was a wrestling dictionary with gifs, Hawk's Hangman's neck breaker would be the one in there.
Yeah, and you know what? I had forgotten that he did it as often as he did.
Yeah.
When I was doing research for this, I was like, oh yeah, like he did that one all the time, and it kind of, looking at the definitions of these, really did bring a lot of memories kind of flooding back as to what different people did and when in the matches.
Yeah. And I didn't have time, so I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did find a match from 1993 between Rick Rude and Hawk.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if it became a dueling neck breakers, because I unfortunately wasn't able to watch the whole thing, but it is available on YouTube. So out of those two, again, the gory looks cool. I love Victoria's version of it, but I have to go old school as you did. I don't think you can't put what a lot of people would call the original, down. It has to get to the final. So I'm going with the Hangman's neck breaker, aka the Rude Awakening. If we
all right. All right, so we are down to our final two here, and at this point, Leonard and I are going to debate it out, or not. Maybe we'll agree.
Okay.
And which version of the neck breaker we think deserves to be the ultimate version of the neck breaker. And so we have the Hangman's neck breaker, and we have the somersault neck breaker. So, Leonard, I will let you go first. Which of these deserves to be our neck breaker champion?
Okay, well, I think both of these are very worthy to getting to the finals. Of course, the Hangman's neck breaker, as we've been saying, is like the definitive version that most people think of when they think of a neck breaker. The blockbuster is also a great variation on that, because after the somersault, it's very much performed like a neck breaker slam or the Hangman's, which is very similar, because it's the flip over, grabbing the neck, and then coming down with it in that type of slam or straight down position. So as far as the final two, these are the two I think should be here. You have the classic neck breaker, and you have a really classic variation on the standard neck breaker with low athletics thrown in. But again, with me being old school, if you look at the list of guys who are known for doing the one version as opposed to the others, we've mentioned Rick Rude and Hawk against Buff Bagwell and Seth Rollins, and nothing against Bagwell and Rollins. I think Bagwell is underrated. That could be a show one day, pick an underrated guy or someone that people, dump on. I think Bagwell had a lot going on for him. But anyway, with that all being said, I will go with Hangman's Neckbreaker as my number one all-time best neckbreaker.
Yeah, and you know what? So we're not going to be doing any arguing here. I would agree with you there. I do like the somersault neckbreaker as well, specifically, when Mr. Perfect would do a variation of it. Nothing against Marcus Bagwell. I certainly saw him do it from time to time, but I was much more of a WWF, WWE viewer. So I more associate it with Mr. Perfect or, people like that, Bret Hart. But so I will, as much as I like that one, I have to go with the Hangman's Neckbreaker because to me, and certainly Rick Rude wasn't the person to start it, but he was the person to make it famous and really put it out there as a devastating finishing maneuver. I wish he would have gotten to do it more often, but when he did it, you noticed it, and it was a great move. So there we have it. We have our champion, which is the Hangman's Neckbreaker. And, that went easier than I thought, Leonard, but we are going.
Well, I think that I would call that a number one seed. I think the number one seed won. So,
and you know what? I'm just thinking of this on the fly. So we're going to keep this as our number one neckbreaker. And maybe down the road, when we have a whole bunch of moves picked, we'll do a ultimate tournament of moves and what we think one of the great finishing move or great wrestling finishing move is. So we'll more on this as it develops.
Yes, I think we have to have a lot more moves figured out, and I'm looking forward to doing this again. This was a lot of fun to do research, but the cool thing was a lot of times, I'll watch matches and different things when we're doing this. For the neck breaker, it was like 10-second clips, so I could go, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I know what you're talking about now that I've seen it."
It was great that all those clips were available like that. And
pretty much I just typed in the name and then it popped up, hey, here's someone known for doing it, or a compilation. Like I found a couple, I know I found a compilation, The Widow's Peak, and a compilation of a couple other, people doing neck breakers, to type of things. I think I actually did found one that compared the Rude Awakening to Mickey James's jumping neck breaker, if memory serves.
Oh, wow.
Or the layout, or it may have been Layla's layout. I think it was the layout. I think it was comparing the Rude Awakening to the layout, if memory serves, is what I found. It was like clips of her and then clips of him. And then it was like, well, who did better?
So would this be your favorite? Initially, we were gonna list our favorites and talk about that. I mean, so this would be our favorites, right? Do you have anything to add in that regard?
No. I had already had some notes done before you kind of gave me the tournament idea and the different versions. And this was going to be my number one. I was going to talk about at the top. My number two was going to be the swinging neck breaker done by the Honky Tonk Man, because to me that's like the first variation I think of is the swinging neck breaker. But most of the other ones I was going to talk about. Again, we didn't get into it too deep, but the idea of, is a stunner a neck breaker? And then I know also that you had mentioned a muscle buster, which Samoa Joe most famously does, probably.
Yeah, and a lot of people do it, but it involves the neck, because you have the neck kind of cradled into like a fisherman suplex type thing. And, the muscle buster was mentioned loosely with the elevated cradle neck breaker, because they're similar in a way. But the muscle buster, you go down on the guy's back, really. Most of the time. So I wouldn't necessarily consider that a neck breaker, but and the stunner, it's tough to say. It really is. I have to admit, I always did view it in terms of the neck, but when you think about it, is it more of like a face or a jaw breaker type move? Maybe, I mean, Leonard, Leonard, maybe you've been viewing it wrong all these years.
Possibly. I'm wrong all the time. I freely admit that. And again, it's interesting how just a slight variation, do you drop down or kick out, makes such a huge difference here.
Right.
what we're talking about.
Right.
And when we did our most underused and overused moves, we did talk about the stunner and the cutter and the
Right.
differences, kind of the slight differences between them. So it's interesting to think that such a slight variation makes a huge difference,
Sure.
where it's basically the same move, but then it becomes a whole other category based on that. And again, if we keep doing this, where does the stunner fall? Do we do a jawbreaker version, or
Well, we're gonna have to, I guess. Um,
I guess, I mean, is that significant enough to be its own thing? Or maybe after we go through the different moves, we could have like a catch-all episode of, here's some signature moves that we haven't talked about because they didn't really fit into any other category.
it'll just be us asking the viewers what they think the move is. What's a stunner? And we're just throwing out.
Well, how would you describe it? Again, it was interesting when I was looking at Neckbreaker how they would describe it, and then they would say, "Oh, this is known as the cross arm was the regal cutter." And I go, "Oh yeah, regal cutter. I know what you mean." Where before I was reading the description of the name and was like, "What is that?" Oh, regal cutter. Yeah. So a lot of that, again, you call things different names. I still call the famouser the rocker dropper. There's still certain names for moves that I think are always connected to a certain guy, even if they haven't done it for a long time, or other people have done it since. So.
Right. But it is the famouser now. So
I know, but I still call
it
it the rocker dropper.
So do you think any of these moves are too dangerous? Any of the neckbreakers we talked about? When you think of one, do you think, oh man, they really shouldn't be doing that one anymore?
No, not really. I think that most of the guys who are doing it, of course, on the national level, they know how to do it. They're trained.
Right.
They know how to protect the different people. So I think that when they're doing it in a safe way. They're not doing it to hurt anyone. Intentionally, at least. I don't ever remember anyone getting a significant injury off of a neck breaker. I'm sure it's happened.
Right.
Of course, when you throw in the twists and flips and different things in, I think you have a higher chance of injuring someone, because there's just more that can be messed up when you're doing that. But again, and then some of the different versions, like the gory neck breaker that we talked about, a lot of that is taken on the knees of the person as opposed to the neck. Some things like the neck breaker slam, that's being taken on the person's back, or the so the person who's applying it is taking a lot of the pressure on the back,
right,
as opposed to the person's neck taking it. So I think the neck breaker, as because we know the pile driver isn't used a whole lot anymore, aside from the tombstone, because that's the person delivering it taking it on their knees,
right,
more than anything. That was a move known to hurt people, and various variations of the pile driver. Maybe pile driver and variation should be the next one we do with this. But the neck breaker is not one that, even though it sounds like, oh, that would really hurt someone's neck, and the neck is a really, significant area that you got to watch. I don't think any of these are, hurtful. And I know another question we're going to talk about was, is the neck breaker overused or underused? I don't think it is. Because there are so many different variations, and I don't think there's a whole lot of people who do it on a regular basis anymore. A lot of guys use it as either a variation as a special move or a transition move. So I think a neck breaker is still a very important move in professional wrestling that a lot of guys do.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably used just enough. And even if someone else would start using it as a finisher in a different way, I don't think that would decrease its value or anything like that. I think because there are so many variations, that the neck breaker is certainly a move that is very significant to wrestling, and a lot of guys could do.
Right, absolutely. And as far as ones that are dangerous, the only one that I would mention, and the only people that do it are people that know how to do it, would be the fireman's carry neck breaker, or the ushigoroshi.
Yeah.
And like people like AJ Styles do it, and although AJ Styles Clash has injured some people over the years, he knows what he's doing, and he and Adam Cole, they always seem to go out of their way to protect the other person. So like that's one that I can see going wrong. And you know what? The inverted overdrive, or the Matt Striker finisher, maybe that's one of the reasons they don't do that one anymore, because you're really going down right on the guy's leg with the back of your neck, really. So maybe there's a reason they don't do that one as much, but yeah, as far as it being oversaturated, no, I agree with you. It's an important move in wrestling, and despite the fact that a lot of wrestlers have neck problems, as you were saying, I don't know that those problems stem from these moves in particular. Now, the argument could be made that over a long period of time of taking moves like this, it might wear on the neck, but it is an important move, and the variations are cool. The way people put them on, people are always inventing new ways to do a neck breaker, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I'm sure, 10 years from now, there will be other ways that people do it, right?
Right. We could probably do this again in 10 years. And
Right.
yes, we will be here in 10 years.
Look for our update.
Yeah.
But no, so this was fun. We hope you enjoyed our conversation on neck breakers. Who knows what move we'll do next? We will probably choose one that doesn't have as many variations. But anyway, our undisputed neck breaker champion, the Hangman's neck breaker. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining us.